This is the End of the Road podcast with your host, Michael Coco. Exploring the horizons we never touch because we're already there.
Welcome, and thanks for listening. And happy Thanksgiving. And to celebrate sort of this season, we're going to be releasing 2 episodes here this weekend, reimagining or celebrating the Oracle of Delphi, so to speak. Because in the past, this was a journey up the mountain to meet the Oracle. But I think in our modern age, with all our communication devices, we don't have to go anywhere to meet the Oracle. The oracles are all around us, and we don't have to travel to meet them. Or do we? What is the journey to meet the Oracle in the modern age? And because of the fecundity of oracular messages that surround us now, for me, what I'm exploring in these podcasts is not so much the messages and the content of the oracles, but our relationship to them and how we meet them, honor them, celebrate them, discern them, hold space for them. What do we do in this modern age with all this information coming to us from all directions? We're going to start our journey in Toronto with the Canadian Oracle and psychic healer Christina Prokos. And then we're going to go to the UK via Marin County in California to speak with Cara Roxanne and Melissa Grace, 2 Jungian Oracle dream workers, perhaps. You can find more information about our first guest, Christina, by going to her website, which is ChristinaProkos.com, that I'll put in our website. And stay tuned at the end of the interviews for more information on sort of the porosity of the human experience. And without further ado, here's Christina. Do you like to play games?
Okay. I'm like, I don't know. It depends. I get like a little nervous sometimes when it comes to games. Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm open to whatever you feel like you want to talk about. Like I'm totally good with whatever.
Okay. Well, here's what I thought. We could play a game just as a way to sort of get to know each other and sort of bridge sort of, because we do come from sort of different generations perhaps, and so it'd be interesting to see like how you view some things differently than how I do. And how I thought about doing that is like, so we make it a game of spirituality, and the game is like identify the top 5 spiritual words or concepts that are sort of bandied about these days that make you uncomfortable or you don't like. And
I don't even know. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Well, I could start first. I could start first. And tell me what you think. So I was thinking about this. Number 1 on my list is sort of authentic self or authenticity. Right. I just, for some reason, it just makes me uncomfortable, and I just don't get into it. And so I guess for me, I sort of resist any notion of a self that's sort of fixed. And authentic to me means like, well, I'm trying to find this part of myself that is sort of immutable and unchangeable. And to me, that it just seems like it just doesn't, to me, it's the whole process is one of sort of transition, and we're in flux and we're in flow, and it's sort of being authentic kind of denies for me, or at least kind of moves against the other idea of sort of transcendence, which is where you can sort of
Right.
push aside the old authentic self and
Right.
transcend into something new and sort of interesting.
I would agree with that, though. I would agree with that. I do have a similar view on the authentic self, or when people communicate about the authentic self. When I'm doing my work, I work on a lot of the shadow emotions. So for me, authenticity really is about learning the parts of you that you reject the most and learning to embrace those parts of you. So it's not like, oh, this person that's like perfect, or like you're just going to be your higher self. It has nothing to do with that. I think like authenticity, you have to understand that the more you move towards being authentic, you're going to get more and more rejected. So how are you going to handle rejection being your authentic self? So that's kind of where I'm at with that. Like, I don't think it's something to, like the moment I find my true self or my authentic self, then I'm done. It really doesn't work like that. You're always learning and growing and have to explore so many parts of yourself. And then I really, really emphasize the importance of what those shadow parts of you, and not to spiritually bypass what your emotions and what you're like, you have to know the bad parts of yourself too. And that's what makes you real. And then what are you going to do by not using those parts on other people and rewounding them, or, whatever bypass you may do. So yeah, I would agree with what you said in regards to authenticity or the authentic.
Okay. Yeah. So that's number one. And I really liked what you said about, that, for me, when having an authentic self necessarily means that there's a part of you that's not authentic, which I'm uncomfortable with that, because like you said, it's about acceptance of sort of everything that comprises the self. So yes. So I totally, okay. So we agree. Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, I love it already. This is fun. Okay. Next.
Okay. Well, okay. So here, this next one's going to be a little bit more dicey because, because I sort of am comfortable with the process of shadow work too, or but I think that we can kind of come to a rapprochement on it. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. So to me, shadow is this. I mean, I don't necessarily. I'm not uncomfortable with the process. It's just that I don't like to call the word shadow, because it implies something that sort of, to me, is sort of darker, sinister, evil. And there's kind of too much baggage about sort of the old sort of Christian ideas of
you're totally
evil.
Linking it to religion.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
And it isn't.
Yeah. Right. But still this part that, to me, like the shadow part almost is the part we should be most grateful for, because it is, and to be celebrated, not call it or at least, anything dark is sort of, to me, it invokes fear or something. And maybe, yes, but still that's the part that really is going to allow us to transform or change in it, and the more that we can kind of embrace it, or I just want to call it something else other than shadow, maybe. Okay.
Well, you can say hidden parts. You can use the word hidden, right? You can use it in these are just the parts of you that are really hidden within your subconscious, right? So, and usually they're like how you're communicating to me right now, from what I'm gathering, there's a belief system that you have tied around the concept of dark, evil, the unknown, and very much a religious component. There may have been adaptations from, I don't know, I'm just assuming from your own childhood experiences that you would have that rejection of that term. And it's fine. I mean, like it's totally okay not to use the word shadow. I think like hidden is also fine to say, like you want to go explore these hidden parts of yourself, or these hidden, how you operate and how you view the world, and how your belief systems are creating cycles and patterns. And so it's important to become aware of them so that you register why you do what you do and how you are and who you are. And that's kind of what the shadow is really about, is going into the depths of you and getting to learn how you operate and what you've adapted from your childhood, and how to change that and be able to navigate your experiences from a different point of view. So, but I totally understand how that experiences with shadow and spirituality and the fear of the unknown. And, you could add so much with that, but usually it's tied to a belief system, in my opinion.
Right. So tell me a little bit about your practices with quote unquote shadow work, or the hidden parts, or whatever we want to reframe it.
Yeah. So when I'm working with a client, what happens is, because I was born with extrasensory abilities, I have the ability to kind of see wherever the consciousness in someone has split. And what I mean by that, it's like an energy, or consciousness is energy. And so whenever there is trauma, there usually a split occurs within a person. And so they start to adapt different types of personalities to kind of navigate and cope with whatever that trauma is. And so my job is to kind of recognize that pattern and see what it's creating and manifesting in your current life and in your current experiences. And so I take a person through, what we do is we feel the emotion. We talk about certain experiences that they've gone through, and we allow them to have like a visceral response within their body and within their nervous system. And then we go into that hidden part, that shadow part, and bring light to it. We bring awareness to it. And we actually allow ourselves the time to process it correctly and give it enough information and context for it to understand why it's operating the way it is. Because you could be a really educated person and have a lot of awareness, but you can actually not be educated with your emotions at all, and you're still out of control with certain aspects. So the shadow gives us the opportunity to really explore the depths of why you're responding the way you are with certain experiences. Like, why am I getting defensive all the time when I logically know this person doesn't mean harm towards me? And so we have to go towards that and become aware of what's hidden in that part from your childhood, and what patterns that have been conditioned in your environment, so that we have the ability to say, okay, this is where this stems from. This is the root cause. And it's caused a fragment. It's caused a split in your consciousness. And now we need to re-educate it, bring that back, and integrate it in a different way. And then that will then change the way you operate as a person and how you respond in your experiences. And that also becomes like an energetic change. So now, by laws of attraction, everything in your life is a big mirror. So when you shift one part of yourself within yourself based on that shadow aspect, you are now aligning with something better for yourself in your reality. Does that sum it up?
Sure. Well, let's say, let's talk about the hidden parts. What is your practice of going into them? Because a lot of times they're hidden for sort of a reason, and there is sort of an energetic barrier to get to them. And, I mean, there are a lot of modalities. I mean, there's all sorts of sort of ways to sort of go into altered states,
right.
So, entheogens, breath work, shamanic drumming. What sort of is your practice to sort of access the hidden parts?
There are levels to it depending on the severity of the situation, because I do also do shamanic work as far as soul retrieval goes. But for the hidden aspects, the shadow aspect, I'm pretty much locked into that person's energy. So I'm experiencing exactly what they're experiencing. I'm sensing, feeling, and knowing what they're going through. And then we're walking on a journey together energetically. And then they're like guiding me through what they're feeling and where it's coming from. And then we then have to figure out what the inner child needs. And then we provide the needs for the inner child. So it really is a guided process when I'm doing that type of work. The shamanic work is very different, because I literally will go into a completely different state of energy and can see, hear, know what exactly the trauma was. Like, I'll get visuals and I'll get actual like physical responses within my body. And that's just part of the extrasensory abilities that I have. So it's not so easy to explain it from like a third dimensional type of point of view. But if people understood energy, they would understand like this is like consciousness that I'm communicating with consistently, and an energy that I'm communicating consistently with. And it's giving me more and more of an understanding, more context without words. And then I go into that process with them. Yeah.
Sure. So it's kind of in an old, and this isn't probably the right way of looking at it, but the old school shamanism is where,
Yes.
or how I see that
Yes.
the shaman actually does the work through their sort of altered states, as opposed to, for example, well, I mean, when people go to, say, ayahuasca retreat centers currently, and a lot of things, they're the ones that are participating in the shamanic ritual. I mean, the shaman is there holding space, perhaps, but he's not. It's different by so much of, I think, contemporary spiritual pursuits are not letting the other person do it for you, but you doing the work, perhaps. And what I meant by old school is, in the past there are customs where it's the shaman that does that, perhaps, and so I think you're doing both. It sounds like.
Yes, exactly. It's been modernized due to my abilities. I have the ability to get there faster than doing a full ceremony. However, I have also seen, and this is good and bad, people who have done like ayahuasca treatments. Some of them have come out of it really, really amazing after they've gone through a journey of that, and others have come to me completely even more wounded, and I've had to go back and really do some serious healing and damage control with regards to that. So everything has its pros and cons, right? So you really need to understand energy and be able to facilitate it in a way where you're not re-wounding a person. And so that's a whole other conversation on its own. But you need to understand energy very well.
Well, you had mentioned that, as part of your journey or practices, you go into different states of energy. And you said it'd be difficult really to describe that, but can you maybe discuss if you have any sort of rituals or ceremonies or something that allow you to do that, or is it something that, is it a different type of a relationship altogether?
I think so. I think like it's been stages, and I've been doing this for such a long time now that I've like learned a lot, and I've obviously built a stronger foundation, and I've just trusted the unknown. And I've done the personal work as well, where I've gone into my shadow aspects, and I've just really trusted a lot of my own understanding around what energy is. And I work a lot with my guides and just have an awareness of what works for me and what doesn't. Do I have a personal practice? For sure. I mean, I meditate, I journal, I do all the things too. But for me, it's just like, I also put myself in the experiences of things. So I'm always like, okay, well, if someone feels this way, how can I relate to them? And what does this actually, what can come out of this experience as well? But it really is an ability that I can't quantify sometimes, because I'm not operating from like even a fifth dimensional perspective. I'm operating from like a ninth dimensional perspective. So it's a lot to do with source consciousness, a lot of this energy that's coming in, and they are also facilitating that energy for me. I'm just a messenger or conduit, or I'm sometimes they're helping and guiding whatever that other person's guides want as well. So that it's a whole spectrum of things, and that's why it's not just so linear in thought. And that's what I love about it too, because it's like, it's as much as I'd love to explain it to make someone understand it from a tangible perspective, you won't understand it until you're in it, or until you've seen me do it. Does that make sense?
Right. No. I because it's not about thoughts and words and conversations.
Yeah.
It's something else. And so it's difficult to do that. So it's like the only way to do it, or the only way to talk about it, is really to participate in it. That's the magic about it.
Here's an example. Okay. Like, let me give you an example. Recently, I just had an event where I had about 50 people come to this event, and it was supposed to be an event on like communicating with your guides and communicating with your deceased loved ones, because I can communicate with them as well. And I was like, okay, so here's 50 people in a room. I don't know if I'm going to get to everybody. I really don't know what this is going to come out to. And some of them, like in the room, have been clients of mine for a very long time. And so they've already experienced so much with me. And here I was, within like 2 hours, I performed like 50 readings, and like everybody was sitting there going, what just happened? Like, we don't even know. Cause I started off saying, I'm not sure I'm going to get to everybody. I don't think this is how it's going to work. I don't know what the energy, I don't know what spirit is. And like, it's just going to come through the way it needs to. And I was performing soul retrieval, and I was helping clear people's energy, or I was integrating a trauma, or I was talking to a deceased loved one. I was performing it all within 2 hours. And I was like, what just happened? But when I was locked in, it was like this, it felt like a dance, like an energy all on its own. And even the people who have known me or who have experienced me for such a long time, they were even in like shock about it. They were like, oh my God, I just witnessed something so different from you. And I never knew that this was something that you could even do. And I was like, me too, girl, me too. Like, it was like the first experience ever as well, when you're walking into it, not thinking you can navigate that. Cause I'm, one-on-ones or a couple of people, or I'm doing a workshop, but then to have a full room of people to do it at that capacity was also new for me as well. So I'm always learning. I'm trying to understand it as well as I'm navigating through it. And all of us can also feel new to a degree, even having done it for so many years, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, it's too bad that were there videos of this evening that we can watch? It sounds like it'd be cool.
There were, but I wanted to respect people's privacy as well. Like, that was kind of the hard part, I also want to be able to respect people's privacy. Like, everybody was there and they were all game, but it was one of those things where I was like, I should have recorded the whole thing. I just didn't think it'd go that way.
Yeah. Well, I totally get that. See, part of me is like, well, okay, let's do something. Let's do something. Let's do something. What should we do? Let's go. Let's go someplace.
You want to go someplace? Okay. So the first thing that I've been sensing off of you is you do hold a lot of anxiety within your chest area. And then I do see that you are someone who is a logical thinker. And so your pituitary gland isn't fully developed. So your intuition isn't fully developed. That doesn't mean you don't get intuitive hits. You do. I do feel like you are someone who can relate to people or can be very understanding, but you do have a lot of skepticism as well. And I think that is in relation to your relationship with your mom, your dynamic with your mother in your childhood. So, and then the anxiety that sits in your chest region, for me, it just feels like you are someone who wears your heart on your sleeve. You are someone who wants to be open and wants to give love and wants connection, but then also has a really hard time and can be very guarded, because I feel like you've been through some betrayals. Would you agree or disagree?
No betrayals. No.
You haven't been through betrayals?
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
Should we use a different word?
You mean people betraying me?
Sure.
Yeah, no. It's probably been more, if anything, I betrayed other people.
Okay. So, then
really, I've had a very blessed life, and
yeah.
I have no, nobody that, but betrayal is not a word that,
okay.
that would resonate with me.
So here's my question then, right? So if you're saying we're talking about betrayals, because it is in your heart, is regardless of whatever the conversation is, for you to betray others, where did you adapt that behavior, or why did you do that? And then we're going to talk about it from childhood experience.
Yeah, not so much childhood. Not so much childhood. Yeah.
So
no.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's just, I was married. I betrayed my wife. But that was, that's the long and short of it. So.
Okay. Right. But so what I'm going to give you in context, this is what I'm trying to make you understand. So like when people come to me, they're ready to explore more of that. You're in a state right now where, like I said to you, your logical brain operates in a specific way. So you're going to naturally, innately go into a state of resistance to certain things. And that's completely normal. Because if we're going to do something, you have to be completely open to the concept of whatever even shadow work is. And because you aren't willing to look at that part of you that is in relation to, why did I do the betrayal to begin with? What was my relationship dynamic with my mother? And how did she betray me in my own childhood for me to then relate or continue to do behaviors in my adulthood? Like, there's a correlation. And so I'll leave it at that. Like, whether you understand that or not, do you get what I'm saying? Like, whether you understand
sure,
that or not,
yeah, no,
right?
no. My mother has not betrayed me. My mother, if anything, would be. I mean, the only thing that would be, it'd be like, and it's not so much a betrayal, but when I was very young, she was still in college, and I mean, it's not really betrayal, but she, spent a lot of time in classes and only saw me in weekends during certain parts, but just, I mean, but that's not necessarily a betrayal to me. A betrayal for me is like, an intentional act. And that was just more of that. But I mean, I have a very loving mother, and I like hit the mother jackpot. I mean, basically. So I had, I mean, I really hesitate to using the word betrayal in that context.
But because you're not willing to see the shadow aspect of that. That's why.
Well, what would be the shadow aspect of it?
Well, that's whether we like it or not, even though your mom prioritized what was important for her at that time, because yes, I mean, she wanted to get educated. She wanted to go to school. She had to work, all of that. From a child's perspective, emotional neglect is very evident there, which to a baby doesn't comprehend that. A child doesn't comprehend, why is mom not with me? That's a betrayal. And you may not understand that because, like I said, your logical brain understands the definition of what betrayal is. These are just like I said, like you like to play the game with words. Like, we're having this conversation about games with words, right? And like what you feel is tied to a specific word. And based on that specific word, that's how you're going to accept that part of yourself. But when we're talking about shadow emotions, you can't play with words. Like, emotional neglect from a mom, even though she was fantastic in other ways, it's still evident because you only saw your moms on the weekend. Like, I'm just giving this as an example so you could understand. Like, if you were someone who really wanted to understand why you're operating in a specific way, or why you have anxiety in your chest, or why something is happening, and I'm locked into your energy, to sit and talk about the definition of a word, it just so that it can fit into your narrative doesn't work with shadow emotion. With shadow emotion, it's like, yes, your mom wasn't around. And so that is, for a child, a form of betrayal, a form of emotional neglect. Do you understand?
Right. Well, I mean, it's not about understanding, it's about feeling it.
Yes.
Like you said.
Exactly.
So,
So it goes back to like trying to quantify the energy component with language, but you can't because it doesn't have a language. It's consciousness. Right.
Well, I'm right now feeling no, I'm just I feel a little bit in my stomach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So do you want to go in that area with me?
Yeah. Let's do that.
Like, that's good. If we're feeling in the stomach, that's fantastic. It means you're having an emotional response to something, which is great. So it could be anger. It could be rejection. It could feel annoyance. It could feel like frustration. It could feel like dominance. It could feel like control. It could feel it could feel like a disorientation. So actually what I'm sensing from you, it almost feels like there's a disorientation that's going on. So I want you to go into your stomach region right now. And I want you to actually allow yourself to feel it throughout your whole entire body.
Sure. Okay.
Great. And I want you, as you're feeling it in your body. Okay. So when I'm locked in, I can feel like a little bit of nausea for me. So that usually is an indicator, and like pressure in the head. So two things that I'm indicating right now. The first thing that I'm indicating is a little bit of this rejection.
No, I feel,
Yeah. Go ahead.
I feel very expansive. Like there's this
Okay.
large empty space, and
Okay.
but it's not anything uncomfortable. It's almost like a different sort of reality has opened up
Okay.
into it, and it's sort of
Right.
circular.
So
It's
you're talking
circular.
to, right. So you're talking to me about bypassing the emotion now. That's what you're communicating. You're bypassing the emotion. The moment you went into the emotion, you went into what your logical brain would want to do with it, which is transmute it, want to change it, not feel it. That's not what shadow emotion does. So now I'm going to say, okay, great. Feel what you're feeling, the expansiveness. But now I want you to move through the expansiveness and actually go into the darkness. I want you to find that and go right back to the stomach region. And I want you to feel the back of your head as well.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're locked into the emotion again. Do you see the difference?
I don't. I mean, I don't really. I don't really have. I don't really have an emotion. I don't
Right.
really have an
Okay.
emotion.
No,
I'm just
gonna
being
say this.
honest with you.
Yeah,
I don't
but
really feel an
so
emotion.
what if that emotion that you're talking about right now is a numbness or anxiety or you're avoidant? Do you get what I'm trying to get at? That's what shadow emotion is. There's an aspect of me that's avoidant of something.
Okay.
You like you've used the language already with me. You've said like I don't like shadow emotion because of whatever that may look like, right? So I'm saying there is a numbness here. So like you operate with a lot of resistance because you're locked into your mental too much, which isn't a problem. It's just how you operate. So I can't break that barrier and because you don't know me well enough. We haven't built a trust yet. So the only way that I can get to the shadow part of you is if you sit with it and you understand that there is a disoriented type of feeling. There is pressure in the back of your head and there was something in your stomach region. And I don't need you to feel the expansiveness of it. I just need you to feel whatever you're feeling. So can we do that?
Well, we're to the best we can. Yes. Yeah. No. And again, it's not. Well, I mean, I wouldn't. Again, I'm not visualizing the word numbness, and it's not a word that. It's sort of like when I meditate in the morning that I feel that instead of experiencing reality through my thoughts or higher up in my brain, I experience like I'm experiencing consciousness in like lower regions, like in my heart. But in this case, it's like it's lower in sort of like the Hara era, the Hara, in Buddhism, where you're down lower and it's
You're
sort of
bypassing
expansive.
again. You're bypassing again. You're bypassing again.
No, okay.
Right.
So
Let's go back to the original game that you and I were playing at the beginning when you said to me, like the authentic self.
Sure.
Right.
Okay.
And we were talking about the authentic self and you were like, I actually don't believe like, all these aspects of like people trying to just figure out the best version of themselves or whatever that may look like. But you are actually abiding by that. What you're doing is you're trying to like, to try to get to an enlightened state, or you're trying to feel a specific way, or the expansiveness of what energy is. And that's all great. That's all beautiful. But when we're talking about dealing with trauma and we're talking about people who have gone through fragmentation and really big post-traumatic stress disorders or other issues, that doesn't exist for them. Like that expansiveness or that idea that concept does not exist for them. And if it does, they're bypassing the emotion. They're bypassing the experience. And so shadow emotion has everything to do with you being able to acknowledge exactly what's going on in your body as it actually is, not as I would like it to be. Do you understand the difference?
Right. No, I'm with you. I'm with you on that.
Yeah. Right. So when I say you're bypassing, it's like you're going into it, you're feeling it in your stomach, in your head. There's a conflict. You're out of it. now I'm going to go into the language that I know and the expansiveness and my practices and what I've implemented as far as so I don't feel what I'm feeling. That's a conflict and it exists within you. So heart over head, like logic over emotion. It's just how you operate, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But in order to work with the shadow aspect or the hidden part, we have to go through those layers of even the coping mechanisms. That's the hard part. That's why it's like this work isn't for like the faint of heart. This work is for people who really, really are like, I've got serious trauma and these are my issues. And these are the reasons why I've attracted X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, great. You ready to go in it? Let's go in it. But if you're living in that resistance, mind over heart or mind over emotion, you're going to keep creating that going into it, but then bringing the bypassing that language of expansiveness. And that's where you're at right now. The layer that you and I are feeling right now is this conflict between you wanting to live in your true self, knowing who you really are, but then adapting all these belief systems and coping mechanisms, and even Buddhism, right? You're talking again based on a belief system around religion or the concept of what religion is, and you're trying to change that belief system, which I'm telling you is tied to your childhood. Basically, my question to you is this: like, how are you raised in your religion as a kid?
Oh, I was raised Catholic.
And what was that like growing up?
I mean, it was. I just don't like being told what to do. Right. I picked that up somewhere. So obviously it's an uncomfortable fit for Catholicism.
Exactly.
So yeah, somewhere along the line when I was young, they said, well, what if Jesus asked you to do this? And it's like, as a way to guilt me into doing something. Right. And so I sort of been anti-clerical, just sort of generally after that. Mm-hmm. So I have had friends who have been abused by priests, but that was not my experience. Right. Although the priest where I was an altar boy was found after I, had graduated and left the community, was caught soliciting minors soliciting male prostitutes in Denver. But that's another story too. But wow. But I was not, a victim of anything, any frank trauma or anything. So.
Yeah. And so then how did you try to modify those belief systems? I mean, you said something very interesting. I don't like being told what to do.
Right.
And so how has that led in your life and your experiences?
It has its advantages and disadvantages. I mean, at times it has served me and at times it probably hasn't. Right. And it's kind of not it's kind of at times it's worked out and at times it really hasn't. But generally speaking, I look back on my life and think, things could have. I'm sort of happy where I'm at now, and maybe I'm bypassing as possible. I'm not disputing that. I'm just telling you that, but that's what I sort of feel.
And there's nothing wrong with you finding gratitude for your experiences and the things that you've gone through. But I think what I'm seeing with you is a polarity within you, and it really is about. There are still things within you that are operating in a specific way, but you've done a very good job with coping and managing with them and keeping them contained, right? Because you even said earlier too, it's like, well, sometimes we don't go there because like it's locked for a reason. Like your language to me is communicating so much about there is trauma there that maybe you want to explore a little bit more of, but there is an aspect of you that doesn't want to unlock it.
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's okay. I mean, if that, there's nothing wrong with that, but to do shadow work on you right now would almost like, it's counterintuitive, because as I'm going into your emotion and I'm feeling whatever, I'm like, oh, there's the duality. There's that part of him again, that he's like, he feels it, but he doesn't want to feel it. He goes into it, but now he's gonna bypass it. Do you understand? So, and like a lot of that is coming from your belief systems around, like you said, the religious aspect of things. I do think that there was emotional neglect because your mom wasn't present with you in your childhood.
Well, she was just so it's clear. So I've got to defend her a little bit. I mean,
No,
it was only like, they were only like,
what you're doing. You're looking at it as a negative. And I need you to understand that the communication that we're having, there is no negative. There is, like, I never said your mom in any which way wasn't a beautiful soul and a beautiful person. That is not what we're communicating here. But because of the way you operate, your brain's going to go black and white thinking. And that's not wrong, but that is the opposite of what shadow emotion's all about and the depth of going into that, right? So that's what trauma does. Like when we're having these conversations around trauma, we're not saying you were raised by horrible people. We're saying there is something that has affected you. And because it's affected you, it has created a personality within you, an adaptation within you. And then you have belief systems around that. And then those belief systems operate in a specific way. And then you're creating patterns and cycles and so on and so forth. And how you've coped with it now is by adapting a different view around it through like Buddhism or through whatever else coping mechanism it may be. And I don't think it's a coping mechanism in a bad way either. Like I'm not looking at it as in a bad way. I'm just saying when we're working with shadow emotions, we have to get really raw and really like, we have to get real. Like, and that's where true authenticity comes from. Like you being able to handle somebody saying to you, but you're not feeling. And you not thinking about it, somebody telling you how to feel. Do you get what I'm saying as an example?
Well, that's kind of what you're doing now, in a way, right? I mean, you're telling me that I'm bypassing
that way. It feels that way based on your belief systems, but that's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is help you understand what shadow emotion is, and even the questions that you posed as far as what your terms were. So we're looking at it from a completely different point of view.
Sure. So yeah, and I guess that's what we were talking about before, that the language is not helpful, I think, in a lot of times, because it implies that, something that is wrong when it's not wrong, when we're both trying to work to the same part.
Exactly. We're trying to be a team. We're trying to work together. We're trying to understand the emotion. We're trying to go into the depths of it. And this is the hard part. The hard part too is like when I have clients of mine that come to me and they're completely like defeated, and they're like, I went to the person who abused me, or like my family dynamic, and I've said to them, this happened to me and you didn't believe me. And I'm like, yeah, that's what it feels like. And now we're going to have to go in the depths of whatever you're feeling within yourself, and you may not believe yourself either. So now what? So we have to figure out a way where we understand that this isn't bad. Mm-hmm. Going into our emotions shouldn't be a bad thing. Being able to explore different ways of looking at things shouldn't be a bad thing. But that goes back to what I originally said to you, that your intuition hasn't fully developed yet. You have glimmers, and glimmers are great because there's a lot to work with that. You have the ability to work with that, but it's still not fully formed yet. And intuition's about being able to be mutable enough to see multiple perspectives. And we want that. We want people to use their intuition so that they have the ability to go, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I do have to sit with that and feel numbness. Oh, you know what? Yeah, maybe there was some betrayal here in this experience, or whatever that may look like. Or maybe I am operating in a state of resistance. What would that feel like if I explored that? That's all we're asking for. Does that make sense?
Yes. And so I guess what would be interesting, I think, and helpful for me, is if, like, the word betrayal conjures up such negative connotations with me as for example, just like, it's almost like if we can create a language that's just based upon energy states, like, that like somebody because betrayal to me implies like an intentional act,
Okay.
because you're intentional to did something, and, and even, it's even, punishable more, in terms of legal aspects of it too. When really this is sort of like an innocent betrayal, but sort of, it's not even betrayal. It's like an innocent vacuum that was created, or, or something like that. I guess that's the part that makes me
I think
react to that.
Yeah,
because I don't want to say that people have betrayed me, because I don't think anybody in my life has really intentionally done something that I would consider like intentional and malicious and things like that. But certainly people could have, been preoccupied by other things and not met my needs that in the way that I would have wanted them to, perhaps. But I mean, that's part of being human. So, well, anyway, those are my thoughts on that. But okay. am I still bypassing?
No. I think what you're communicating to me again is very much linked to the way you were raised with religion, and like that good and bad thinking. Like even your definition of betrayal is exactly what the definition of betrayal actually is. Of course, like someone may intentionally do something to betray you, but sometimes people don't register that they're doing it, and they have an unawareness of what they're doing it, because trauma is leading. Trauma is always leading. Our behaviors are based on trauma. We're always leading with some form of an emotional pattern within us due to our adaptations. And so again, you have this I would love for you to explore that belief system around religion and how it really is black and white thinking, and how that's creating even this narrative. Because like your betrayal, like the way you're saying it for yourself, is tied to shame. Because you said you did the betrayal. Now my question to you is like, did you maliciously intend to hurt your wife? I don't think so. I don't think you wanted to. In my opinion, I don't know.
Oh, yeah. No, certainly. No,
right,
that's
right.
exactly.
For you to have such a rigid way of looking at betrayal, like that's putting you in a box, in a corner. And I'm like, but that's not what you didn't mean to do it. There was something energetically, emotionally within you that led. That was a trauma that was leading. So it would not be fair for me to say that you did something so bad that, yes, it did hurt someone. Of course it did. So there was a consequence to it. But I don't think at the time that you were doing it, you wanted to do it in that way to hurt someone. So do you understand? Like there's a contradiction in even the definition itself.
Right. And yeah, it's almost, I'm thinking more about what you said about the religious upbringings and black and white, and I think I'm very cognizant of that, or at least ostensibly cognizant. Whether or not I really get that I really think that. I think going back to the game we were going to play at the beginning, but which we don't have to, because we got into other things, obviously.
It's okay, because you know what? I'm glad your guides came forward. They said what they wanted to say. I was just a messenger of whatever that may look like. This will help maybe you look at things from a different point of view, and that means I've done my job. Good or bad in experience, whether that's what you wanted or what you thought it was going to look like or how you expected it to be, it really doesn't tie anything to me. What it does is it's just information and a different point of view. That's all it is at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, so what tell me what you think of this. And I think it's kind of related to what you're saying. For me, this idea of belief is interesting, because that implies that something is something, meaning something has being, something like, you are right and I am wrong, and what I was getting at is that sort of like, I think that is a religious belief, because like you have a belief that certain things are true and certain things have existence, objective phenomenologic, objective existence, as opposed to relationships, meaning that instead of things are this or that, rather it's about your relationship to the sort of the conversation, because things aren't black or white. It's rather your relationship to the dynamic, if that makes sense. And I'm probably not.
No. You're getting it. Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah, totally.
So and this is why, one of the words, the buzzwords is like holding space for stuff in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And because that implies like your relationship, you're not being drawn into it, but you're able to sort of observe it and relate to it and honor it. And the question then becomes like sort of, you have altars everywhere because things are arising and you're honoring them, or you have spaces that you're cultivating. Just the whole language turns different than, this is this and this is that and this is right and this is wrong, and so the whole idea of the word betrayal I don't even like, because that's like a thought. In a way that's like it evokes too much mental information when really it's the relationship that was severed. There was a severing or a discontinuity of the relationship, perhaps, or a change in the relationship, a transition.
Yeah.
As opposed to, anyway.
I think I love what I'm hearing right now. I think what I'm hearing is that you're like kind of looking at it from a different point of view, and I think that's all I'm asking for is that we could have that conversation. Like, I think most people want like the idea of when they meet a healer, or they meet somebody, they want proof. I want you to tell me. You tell me right now. And then when you tell them and you give them the context, and it's like, this is just information that's coming your way, or this is what I'm reading, or this is what's happening. I have no attachment to it. Like it doesn't change who I am as a person. I'm reading what the energy is giving me, the consciousness of whatever's happening right now. And so it's your job also to kind of go, how does this make sense to me? How, and if it's coming up for a reason. So let me explore it. And that's kind of what like the fun part of shadow work really is like an exploration of self. You have the opportunity to say, well, yeah, maybe I am this way. Or like, it wouldn't be fair for me to turn to you and say, wow, you betrayed someone. You're an awful person for doing that. No, I'd be like, okay, what happened? Tell me what happened. What were you feeling? What were you going through? What were your thoughts? What were your experiences? How did your trauma lead? Like, that's the type of person I am. Like, I'm not judging anyone for their experiences, because I think like we're human and our job is, to learn more about how to find that compassion and empathy for people and their experiences. I know there are extreme experiences. And of course, I wouldn't say in extreme experiences, you have to have empathy for everything. I think there's a boundary in logic when it comes to that. But ultimately, I think when we're talking about, emotional neglect or trust issues or betrayal or shame or any addiction, it's like, let's explore the shadow. What's going on there? And usually there is that self-preservation or that resistance that will come in, or what we refer to as the ego, right? Everyone wants to just dissect the ego or let go of the ego, but it's there as, like you said, locking the trauma away because you're just not ready to face it yet. And when you're ready to face it, then you're going to go into the depths of that and you're going to be like, oh, now I get it. Now I know why that was important for me to go through and feel.
Mm-hmm.
Are we? Right. Are we? Yeah.
No, we're still here. We're still here. What are the guides saying now? Where should we go next?
I don't know. I think they said what they wanted to say.
Okay, good enough.
You
Good
need
enough.
to sit with that.
Yeah, well, good enough. Well, we should.
Tell me more now. It's like, but we didn't even acknowledge or accept the first part. So let's, figure that part out first, and then we would move on to the next thing, right?
Yeah, no. That's assume it's linear and not circular, which is a whole other thing.
That's so funny. Yeah,
so,
true.
Okay, so can I ask you one more question?
Of course, yes.
Is there a difference between thought and spirits?
That's a good question. I've never really. I mean, yeah, there is, because I can tell my thoughts. My thoughts are, sometimes they're tied to like insecurities, or they're tied to, just my day-to-day tasks, or, I'm just thinking about experiences or whatever. Whereas if I'm communicating to spirit, it's very direct in its communication and how I work. So, and it feels like, they're going to give me what I need to hear when I'm in a session. And if I need to hear a message when I'm out of a session and I'm navigating my day-to-day experiences, I'll also get like psychic visions. They'll give me visions of certain things, or I can hear they'll tune me into conversations that are being had about me, or experiences that I need to be aware of. So I do think that there is a difference. I think it takes time to develop the understanding of the difference, because it can feel a little confusing when you're starting off with working with intuition, or you are an intuitive person that wants to start doing this type of work. It can feel like confusing. But I will tell you this: if there's like negative thoughts or negative experiences that are coming through, you have to be mindful that that is not your guide. That is not spirit communicating to you. They're soft, they're gentle, they're kind, and they're direct in their messaging. So it's very different than how we operate in our thought patterns. So yes, in my opinion, there is a difference.
Okay. Do we have time for one more question?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, I want to get your reaction to this. So one of the people that I sort of am interested is a Zen hospice worker named Frank Contasecchi, and he has a sort of, his orientation to life is welcome everything, push away nothing, which is And so, how would you relate to that in terms of like, anything just like what you just said in distinguishing either thoughts from spirit or just anything? What was your first reaction when I told you that?
Well, I think that's a beautiful concept. I think that accepting everything that you can in your life and in your experiences will help you navigate through a lot, especially grief itself, and the choices that you're making, and whatever life brings your way, or whatever if you're consciously aware that you're attracting your experiences too. For me, it feels good to hear that, because it's like, then when the negative shows up, I have to be with it, and I have to sit with that, and I have to embrace that, and I have to move with it in my body and understand that shadow aspect of whatever's coming up in my life and in my experiences. And I accept it. And sometimes it's not easy to do that. But because I've been doing this work for a very long time, for me, it's like, and I've had a lot happen within the last year for me to be like, you need to sit in this, and you need to process this, and you need to be in the grief of this. And then you need to remember how this is tied to, your rejection wound, or your betrayal wound, or your mother wound, or your father wound, or whatever the wound may be. And that's just another layer of your consciousness that you need to become aware of. And when you do that, you have the ability to really navigate another aspect of yourself. For me, that's kind of how that relates too. So yeah, I really like that concept of, and I don't push anything away. I can't. It's just not in my nature to push anything away.
Oh, wonderful. So how do people get in touch with all your mischievous activities and your soul retrievals and all
all
the
this
goodies.
fun
All
stuff,
we've been
and
talking
all
about.
this
If they want to,
and debating, so we could debate more. So you can follow me on Instagram, Christina_life_spiritual_, or my website, www.ChristinaProkos.com.
oh, wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This was a great conversation. I appreciate this so much.
And we're back. And what I wanted to sort of riff on was this idea of human porosity and sort of a different narrative about it. And that's sort of what I'm sort of wanting to reconfigure sort of our relationship with a lot of these things. For example, there's so much emphasis put on the ideas of, anyone like Carl Jung, and I just want to use Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud as examples. So much emphasis put on what they actually said, what they actually mean, the content of what they did. And in my mind, the more interesting question is sort of this meta-narrative that went along with them. And it goes something like this, and this may or may not be historically accurate, but this is sort of what I'm imagining it to be. So Carl Jung had a patient population after his break from Sigmund Freud, which included, as my understanding, working with mental health patients in sort of an asylum type setting or whatever they called it back then. So he was dealing with a different patient population after his break with Freud than, for example, what I imagine Freud dealing with is sort of Vietnamese society types, which may or may not be accurate. But, privileged people that we're talking about, first world problems, not people that are, having what psychologists called schizophrenic episodes or whatever, or psychotic episodes, which Jung had. And then sort of Jung, like what happens after that is how his thinking changed. Then comes the Red Book and all this diving into, mythopoetic narratives and different ways of establishing reality. So what I'm getting at is sort of like we become who we're sort of connecting with, even if it's like, patients, clients, so to speak, friends, what you watch on TV, what you listen to, and to sort of really focus more on that. So it's not so much what I'm, exploring what Jung actually thought, but rather how he was reacting to what was coming into him. And then we get to sort of this animism that I sort of am just flirting with. Not that I really understand it at all, but this idea of encountering, and I was talking a little bit about this in the podcast with Christina, that to reconfigure beliefs, so what we think of as what we believe as sort of like a living, breathing spirit that comes in. And then you can kind of work with that energy, because then it's sort of more, its boundaries are more defined. For example, if you had, Christina, but people will bandy about terms like, bypassing or, gaslighting or any sort of these other sort of, terms which are so non-specific for me. And that's why I sort of, like, as I talked in the podcast, I just resist all that crap. And we can tell how I'm characterizing it as crap. But so not so much putting these pigeonholes around these ideas, but actually confronting the living spirit of what bypassing is, what energetically is actually going on, or, gaslighting or narcissism and, any sort of things. And that's what I think the interesting part is, if you can imagine, what the event is that is occurring in your real life, and as opposed to just labeling it gaslighting or whatever, but energetically, experiencing that as a living sort of organism. The thought pattern that's coming in is a living organism. Then you can kind of honor it, create space for it. And I guess what I was trying to see here, let me see. This is what I put. This is what I wrote on threads or whatever they call it these days. Honoring someone or something establishes a separation or boundary between you or them. To hate, dislike, or dishonor removes all boundaries and separateness. Good luck. So I guess that's like if it's something that is coming in to you, some spiritual entity, which is everything, because we're all porous. Well, maybe. This is what I'm exploring. It doesn't necessarily.